Writing stems on notes is one of those things that makes you feel a little bit nauseous if you do it wrong. So today what we're going to talk about is what direction to go in and what side of the note you should put them on as well. First thing we should talk about before going into stems is understanding what notes are made up of. There's multiple parts to a note, and in order for us to know where the stems go, we need to know what's going on there. So the first part of the note is the note head. This is basically the dot or the circle, depending on what note value you're working on. The next thing, and the thing that we're focusing on today, is the stem, which is like the stick that comes up or down from the note head. Now, other things that you'll see could be a tail. So if you're talking about, let's see, 8th notes, 16th notes, or quavers and semiquavers, if they're standing on their own and are not part of a group, then you have this thing called a tail. When you're writing a tail, it doesn't matter what direction the stem's going in, the tail always goes to the right-hand side, and that's that. And when you get 2 or more 8th or 16th notes or anything shorter than that, and you join them together, there's a thing that goes across the top, and that's called a beam. Stems can basically go in 2 directions. They can either go up, and if they go up, they're always on the right-hand side of the note, or they can go down, obviously, and if they go down, then they go on the left-hand side of the note. Now, I always when I'm teaching it, I always think of when stems go up, the note looks a bit like a D, and if the stem's going down, then the note looks a bit like a P. The next question is, I suppose, is how do we actually decide whether the stem goes up or down? And that's to do with the staff or the staves. Before going into the rules, just a quick sort of recap on what a stave is. Now, these are the things you see on your music that have like a treble clef or a bass clef at the start. It's basically, it doesn't matter what the clef is, you've got 5 lines and 4 spaces, and that's you've got it. So when it comes to actually deciding whether a stem goes up or down, it depends where you put it on the stave. So if you think about the 5 lines in a stave and think about the middle line, or the 3rd line up or down actually, as being the midpoint. If you have a note that's written above the midpoint, then the stem comes down the way. If you have a note that's written below the middle line, then the stem goes up the way. And of course the question then is, what direction does it go in if it's written on the middle line? Well, that is up to yourself, really. Generally what happens is the stem will continue to go in the direction of the notes before it, or maybe right after it, depending on what's happening in the music, but there's actually no right or wrong direction for them. You just have to kind of go with the flow. As with everything else in music, there's always an exception to the rule. Sometimes you'll have like what's called 2 voices on one line, so if you're looking at choral music or something like that, then you'll have like an upper line and then you'll have a lower line. Now, it doesn't matter where the music's actually written on the staff at that point, the stem will always go up for the upper line of music, and then the stem will always go down for the lower line of music, and that's it's the same on treble or bass clef. Okay, now you've got a much deeper understanding on how to write notes. To help you a wee bit further and to make you even better at understanding notes, then watch this video on note values. That will give you a good understanding on how long each one of them last and how they relate to each other. And then if you tie that in with today's video, then that's you pretty much mastered notes. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in another video.